Empathy and vulnerability. I believe they're strengths. The Marine Corps probably would think otherwise. And I think coming from a female point of view, generally, they're more empathetic and vulnerable. How have you experienced that in the Marine Corps, and how would you describe that?
Well, it's actually two completely different experiences to share. And one of them is I don't think it's funny. I look at my husband and others that I've met in the Marine Corps then that I've met. And I don't think it's that they lack, there's maybe women have a little bit more intuition or empathy, nurturing instincts, whatever you want to call it. But I think the unfortunate truth is the way that we raise men in America in our society is to kind of push everything down. Like, you're not supposed to show your feelings, or you look at that as a weakness. So I just wanted to say that because I think that's a very unfortunate truth too. Like, I think we unintentionally isolate men, and that's why their suicide rates are so high too. And I never really appreciated that or knew the extent of it until after I got married and I got to know my husband. But it's actually easier, I think, for women because, and even in the Marine Corps, because we're kind of expected to be empathetic and feeling, right? So the surprising thing is when a woman, to some people, like, is when we don't react to something. Nobody seems surprised if a woman like cries in public or something, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. If a man does it, it's like, whoa. Everybody kind of stops. It's like, what happened? There must be something really catastrophic going on. So it's interesting. I never really found it super difficult to, just be myself and be empathetic towards my Marines, my friends that I met. And to an extent, I think everybody wears the mask of, you have to show your strength and not your weakness constantly. But I think in some ways it's still easier, even in the Marine Corps, to be a woman and be more empathetic because of the expectations are just different. And I think it served me pretty well. I always tried, like I said, my grandfather taught me how to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think going through my own mental health journey, you just never know what somebody is going through at any given time. So if somebody has like a strong reaction or is stressed out or they react in a negative way, I think it rarely has to do with you as an individual, right? Like, it has to do with them and what they're going through and their perceptions and their fears and insecurities, right? So I think that's a big part of empathy too, is just knowing that that is a fact. Like, a lot of people don't wake up one day and be like, I'm going to be an asshole to everybody because that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You're just, or I have the worst day of my life today. Nobody wakes up and thinks that. Nobody wants to be bad at their job. Nobody wants to not be liked. I think that's just something that is really important for everyone to keep in mind. And that's definitely part of empathy. And, sharing the other part of that, of being vulnerable with people, is sharing your own experiences and being honest and open with people really breaks down barriers. Like, I've seen that happen firsthand, where I tell my story to someone face to face and then they just offload. Like, their whole demeanor changes. They're not like, if they were standoffish before, they kind of relax, and it really paves the way to a better connection with, peers and even subordinates. People trust you more if you're just honest with them and open. I think that's really important. Yeah.
So kind of going into the next question, about mental health. So to preface it, in the Marine Corps in general, in aviation, in the military, and I think overall, if you say you are having depression, anxiety, or anything like that, or worse, that you're not going to fly for a year or something like that, you're not going to fly. You're going to lose your job, potentially your livelihood. So could you just kind of walk us through a year before you, we'll call it, raised your hand to you did, and just that journey?
Gosh. So a year before I asked for help, I was still in California. My husband and I hadn't moved to Okinawa yet, but we were preparing to. We knew we were coming. We knew where we were going, but things weren't too bad. I was seeing a therapist, and I was working on some things, and the Marine Corps didn't know because I was paying out of pocket for it, but it was pretty much doing its job. And then I think moving to Okinawa and experiencing some of the things that we already talked about, the kind of passive sexism like increase, and then the high op tempo, and the just couple of just this stress of being foreign, a very, very different country, and trying to, have some kind of life on top of just working. All of that just made everything that was all my underlying issues worse, and felt myself kind of going in a worse direction over time. I think, like we were just talking about, there was a lot going on, so I wasn't my best self at home or at work. And I could kind of tell that I was getting, my temper was, a lot, I was on a shorter fuse, and stress was getting to me. Any kind of change or anything would just set me off, and I'd have a lot of anxiety about flying and just everything. And I think what happened was one of my brothers had an incident back home, and that just kind of really tipped me over the edge, because in my mind, I'm out here working as hard as I can and dealing with all of this stress, and not really any benefit from it anymore. Like I wasn't getting any satisfaction out of teaching anymore. I wasn't getting any satisfaction of flying or being on the ground or being a Marine anymore. And I was just like questioning every day, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this anymore? And then finally, like one day, I was supposed to fly at night, and I got to work, because we come in late so that we can fly late. And usually when I would go in and I'd do the brief and we'd get moving, my, depression episodes and everything, I was able to kind of like let it go, focus on what I was doing, and everything was fine, right? I'd been doing that for a long time. But this particular day, it didn't work. Like I still felt in this funk after you're preparing to fly and everything. And I thought to myself, I'm not putting, like, yes, I'm lost right now. I don't know why I've lost sense of like what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, why I'm here. But the squadron deserves better than what I can give to them right now, especially these people I'm about to go fly with. I'm not taking them out when my mind isn't in the right place. So I went and talked to my XO, and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever done, because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. But I reached that point finally where it's not that I didn't care anymore what happened to me, it's just I have found something that's more important, and it's getting my mind right. I get in to go fly, and after the brief and preparing to walk to the aircraft, my low funk didn't go away like it usually did. And that's when I knew.
What could you describe that? Like, what's that funk? What was that?
It's almost like a lethargy, like a mental and sometimes physical sensation where you can't force yourself to do anything. And for me, like, I know the physical sensations like manifest different for different people, but I always got a lot of pain in my arms, and it's like I couldn't form sentences, like full sentences. It's like, I always equated it to you're treading water, and then all of a sudden the waves just break over your head and you can't resurface. So you're just pressured, like under the water. You can't get up for air, and you don't feel like yourself.
I feel like it's really hard to describe, but also if other people kind of hear that coming from somebody who's experienced it, that it's not this is all in my mind. It manifests physically in, the weight, the pain, and again, especially I believe with empathetic individuals who have this sensitivity, and in some ways it's a superpower, and it also can be a curse in a way, because I like to speculate, is like how many people in the squadron were thinking the same thing, who didn't like it, especially on the enlisted side. because you know, and I know it's very different
Yeah.
from officer to enlisted side of expectations, work hours. You're feeling that, not just you. The tempo of a Marine Osprey squadron is different, man. It's different than infantry battalions and different. It is wild. The
Yeah.
expectation that a poor leader puts on, a squadron CEO puts on his, men and women when they're bad, because and then they say that the company grade are the ones that are screwing things up, when it's, in my mind and from what I saw, is like it was always the opposite.
Yeah.
Um, Sorry to digress there, but so
That's fine.
please continue.
No, I think you're right. I think even in good squadrons, Osprey squadrons have a lot of demand, a lot of pressure. And then if you have a couple of bad field grade officers in there or senior enlisted, it just makes it worse. So yeah, I think you're right. Part of it was the culture of the squadron that I was in at the time that I, you know, asked for help wasn't as good as the one I came from. That's for sure. And feeling that, like, people know that. You can get a sense for it when you walk into, yeah, there's pressure on an Osprey squadron no matter what, but then you add a couple of, not so great people in there and it changes the whole vibe, or like a bad culture. You
Yeah,
I've talked to so many people. They were like, I walked in the squadron today and it was just, I got this weird feeling, like it just wasn't happy.
right.
People
Yeah,
can tell that. Yeah.
but if you can continue on from where you're walking to the aircraft, or right about there.
So I realized that I wasn't going to perform like I should, and that, the people that I was especially scheduled to fly with that day deserved better than what I could give them at that moment. I went to my XO and I said, "Hey, I'm going through something," and it was terrifying to do. I Probably one of the scariest things that I've ever done, because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I didn't know how they were going to react, and at that point, it didn't really matter to me anymore, because what was
And
more
I
important.
think that's super important. Sorry to interrupt,
It's
because
fine.
leader should put that expectation out there. That makes me get excited, because that's a failure of leadership,
Mhm.
and that's across the board. I experienced that multiple leaders where you have no idea how they're going to react, but you have a fear that they are going to react poorly to whatever it is you bring them, because it's not, it's like, hey, we're not going to make the flight schedule tonight, as of obviously one, and that it's going to be poor, and that's a reflection in my mind of this. Why? Because
Yeah.
don't you want to have guys that are going to come to you, and women that are going to bring you everything and work there for you? Or, and then I think in the Marine Corps side is like, hey, if the guys and girls love you, they will die for you and do whatever it is. But it's so many leaders miss that point. And I was always like, what the hell? I'm definitely not going to die for that guy because he's an idiot. So I'm going to do something a little different so I can
Yeah.
live.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it's not only on the individual level too. It's Marine Corps as a whole. You know that the Marine Corps doesn't care about you as an individual, because I mean it's a wild expectation, because it has a job to do, the organization, and it can't. But just, yeah, are they gonna completely hose me? Are they gonna
Right.
try to take my wings? Are they gonna ad set me, med board me? I
Right.
don't know. But
Yeah.
that's the tragedy, is at any point along the way before I was in that office with my XO, who handled it so well. Like, I didn't know it at the time, but he was the exact person that I should have gone to, because he had a family tragedy having to do with depression and suicide. I didn't know anything about. It was just luck again. I went to the right person and he was very empathetic towards me. But at any point along the way, I could have gotten help at some point or taken a break, and then I wouldn't have had to stop flying, right? But the fear and the expectations were always there, where I was like, no, I need to hold on to this. I need to keep going. I need to figure this out myself. So instead, like, I waited until the last possible minute to just say, I can't do this anymore. That's it. Like, I'm done. You got everything you could out of me. So, and I wonder how many people are doing the same thing. Like, they're just holding on as long as they can for fear of what may or may not happen.
So, talk to me about your transition out of the Marine Corps. You recently got out,
Yeah.
and what's that been like? Because I know for me, I was like pretty initially, it's like elation. I'm like, whoa, no stress and home at the same time every night. And, I feel like, but that for me, it faded. And then I was like, oh, I got to make money and do all these other things and work for another big boss man. But so tell me
Yeah.
about your transition and where you're at right now.
So I'm definitely still in the honeymoon phase for sure, because my husband and I, we put away enough money for us to take a year off and not start any new careers.
Awesome.
We're only 3 months into that period of what we like to call our midlife retirement.
Yeah.
So it's it's nice. You know, we're kind of settling in to our house, and we're actually expecting our first child too. So that's,
Oh,
yeah.
awesome. Congratulations.
I'm actually like very pregnant right now. You just can't tell.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Boy, girl, yeah? You find out any details?
It's a boy. Yeah. Due in November.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, well, congratulations. Incredible.
Thank you. I think I wonder sometimes if we weren't, if we weren't preparing to be parents, how much idle time we would have and what that would kind of feel like. But right now it's just, like you said, stress free, and we both have plans as to what we want to do. There's no, there's no rush, I guess, to figure anything out, because we know we have each other and we know it'll work.
I love that the year midlife sabbatical, I think.
Yeah.
That's funny because my wife and I were now about 3 months into our year plus in Bali. So it's probably going to be longer when, again, the kids started school, but we'll see. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings on the exit of Afghanistan, because I think that a lot of Marines, when that happened, is it now 3 years ago, and I was out of the Marine Corps, you're in the Marine Corps, because it seems just like a utter failure to me. And as I look back at it and what we did and time spent, lives lost there, and all of the past 20 years of the suicides from spending that time doing those things. So it's like and the money we left there, the equipment, right? You're just like, wow, it seems like a waste. And I think a lot of Marines, soldiers, veterans look back, and hindsight now and the digital age, it's much quicker, and they're questioning, what the fuck are we doing? Who are we serving? So I'd love to get your thought on the Afghan pullout.
Yeah, I feel for those veterans and how they must look at that entire event and just the time that they put in and the people that they lost and everything. And I feel for that. I would question the heck out of it too. Like, what were we doing and why, and what was it all for in the end? If this is how I knew that this is how it was going to end, I probably would have done something different. I can't pretend that I envy the people, the leaders who were making, that the pullout happen. That's for sure. Um, I talk a lot about leadership and bad decisions and things, and I like to kind of backseat drive and critique, but I don't know, like, who knows what those conversations were like behind closed doors after the fact. Like, why didn't some more people get fired or held accountable for just the absolute shit show that it was? I don't know. I can't even pretend to know. And I honestly don't know if it would be more satisfying for anybody if more people had gotten fired, right? Like, the same thing
Right.
would have happened, and we still have the same outcome at this point. So I think the strongest feelings that I have about that are for the lives that we lost and the veterans that have to face that now and have questions about their time in service. And I hope that they can find peace with that, because that's a tough one. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I question, like, when we were, I imagine, especially being on a boat for months at a time, like, what are we doing? Why am I here? That's pretty low threat, right? I think at some point we all kind of question things, because how could you not, when you don't have the whole picture, you don't like, you're not
Right.
getting all the information, or you're getting, or you do and you don't agree with it.
Similarly, I think that's how, like, healthy skepticism, as you're saying, or thoughts where you're like, hey, I don't have all the information. You and I think like that, where my thought is that the leadership is like, I know what's happening and I got it. And you're like, oh,
They don't.
what? How do, yeah, they don't have it.
Anyone
There's
who
a
tells you they know
psychological,
what they're doing is
yeah,
lying.
it's, God, there's the psychological phenomenon is like whoever speaks the loudest, most aggressively is the dumbest. And I'm forgetting the it's like two psychologists came up with this and tested the theory, and it works. And you're like, oh, okay, so anybody
Yeah.
who's loud and says a maxim is the dumbest, so don't listen to them. But a lot of people do because they're aggressive and say it loudly on, amplified by social media, etc.
And that's what our culture, you know,
Yeah.
glorifies, is aggression and just, yeah.
Yes, exactly. All right, so kind of finishing up, and two more things. So, Trish, what do you think your superpower is? Because I know you've got one. And maybe I could probably give you one, but I think it's an interesting question. I gave you about 15 minutes to think about it.
Yeah.
um, because I think it takes a lot of guts, a lot of intestinal fortitude. That's a big Marine Corps word used a lot, to come into the Marine Corps as a female.
On that kind of line of thinking, I think the superpower, the thing that served me well during, and helped my decision to join the Marine Corps, and thinking that I could do that, is just, I guess, just determination that I had. And just, I knew it was going to be difficult, but I didn't necessarily care. I didn't see myself as having less value, or having
Mm,
anything less to give to the Marine Corps because I was a woman, right? I never really saw myself as being different. I just knew what I wanted to do, and I went for it. And if anybody told me, no, you can't do that, like, it went back all the way to my grandfather saying, like, no, I'm not going to teach you how to shoot a gun. Like, no, you are.
right.
Like, there's literally no difference between me and, like,
Yeah.
my male cousins, right? So I
Yeah.
don't know if you would call that determination or stubbornness, but that's all. I guess they kind of work together. I think that's really it. Because that's what kept me, that kind of thing kept me going through the test and the, you know, officer candidate school, TBS, all of that stuff. Is, I have to keep going. I'm stubborn as hell, and I'm not going to let this thing beat me. The same
Yeah.
thing, same approach that I had with my mental health too, was I'm going to fix this, and no one's going to tell me that I can't. I'm going to
Right.
figure it out.
I would add on to that empathy that
Yeah.
you had just from your, like, the little bit you've shared from Urban Valor to now, is that that's something that's underrated. And because you can, I think, I will see, like, you can sense people's traumas, fears, things, right? Because as you said before, that nobody's going to work to be like, I want to have a shitty day today, but their trauma goes with them and
Mm-hmm.
it bleeds out of them. And you could sense that from, like, other, when you've been around other men, how to carry yourself around other men, in the Marine Corps. And so I think that that's just another add-on, because I think that that's super, it's like an underrated one as well, of like empathy. Add on to
No,
that. So
I
we got
think,
determination, empathy.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. Like, I thought that's kind of like the secondary one. I think that really started when I had to constantly read my stepfather's moods and emotions to not get caught in the
Right.
crossfire, right? So, yeah,
Exactly.
I can feel like I read people pretty well, whether, it came from a pretty dark place, but I think it's also served me well. So
From the CIA, they talk about childhood trauma is something that spurs like great agents, if you will, because were in a young age, they were put into these, or had not put in, but just had situations where they were like, like yours, where you're like almost inescapable, right?
yeah,
There is no way out.
you're helpless. You're a
And
child.
right, right. And then you're like thrust into this adult environment and decision making and thought process when you're helpless. Like, how do you figure it out? And like, how do you do it? And so, like, I think that's an example where you're reading nonverbal cues and all of these things that, let's say a spy is doing, but you're doing it as a child so you don't get hurt, yelled at, whatever that is. And so, like, so
Yeah,
again, so maybe it's empathy and determination.
yeah, survival
Um,
mode.
Right. So finishing up and I haven't done this like on the show before, but I don't know if I'm game for it because I think it's cool. So typically I give who I'm chatting with kind of 4 descriptors.
Yeah,
And so I have Marine, you know, Aviator, because again, we in the Marine Corps, we separate those out, right? We're Marines first, and then we're whatever other job we have. And I love that. And that's partly why I joined, and maybe you too, because I kind of love that idea as well. So we
yeah.
have 2. So what would be the other 2?
Gosh.
Otherwise, I'm going to make them up for you. They'll be good though.
Yeah. Yeah, you might have to make them up. I don't know. I guess I know empath is a thing, but I don't really think of myself as that.
Well, I can certainly add mother on there because, right, you're already growing a human, so we could do that.
I am growing a human. I've been a dog mother for quite a while. Yeah.
Well, you know what? That
She's
preps
right here.
you. That preps you. And I saw your dog. It's what is a doodle, right? What is it?
Yeah, a Saint Bernard poodle.
Oh, it's Saint
Yeah,
Bernard. Okay, because I thought
yeah.
is that didn't look like a Saint Bernard. It was brown
I
haired.
know. She's dark, but she's yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. She's very
Okay.
friendly.
Well, that preps you ish for a child. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I know. I can at least care about another being more than myself, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know. The You might have to help me out again.
I mean, I think we could go with a few. I mean, I could probably, I don't know how to, like, I think, empath potentially. Um,
I'm planning on writing a book. I'm in the process of doing that. So you can put
cool.
writer on there. I did write an
All right.
article, one, but pretty proud of it.
Yep. I like it.
Yeah.
Writer. Okay. Well, yeah, I think, I mean, yeah. So we have options of Marine, Aviator, Empath, Mother, Writer, something like that. How far along are you on your book?
I am basically I'm still in the very like beginning kind of writing down. It's going to be basically a collection of just stories, hopefully, that make sense and give like the bigger picture of where I started versus how I ended up. But yeah, I'm writing down a lot of the memorable stories that I have in my brain still.
Cool.
Yeah,
Do you have a name yet?
I don't. That's
Okay.
honestly the hardest part, I think, is naming the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. I'm interested to hear the name and yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
All right. Any last rounds? Anything else before we end it officially?
I don't think so. I think we talked about a lot of good things. Thanks for having me. It was a good conversation, I think. Hopefully it helps some
I
people.
No,
Yeah.
I believe it is. Thank you for being on. Thank you for your time.